because every single solitary study has said now, and many of them are new studies, that children that were exposed to the divorce during the parents' time when they're getting divorced have long-term effects. But children that were not exposed to the divorce process do not have lingering effects when they're older. That's what the long-term studies show.
Wow.
So what you have to do, it's all about, again, it's not really about the lawyers. It's not really about the judges. We're just helping people move on. It's about the parents making a decision, jointly or singularly, to protect their children from the process of divorce. And if they do that and they don't involve them and they make decisions and prevent a stranger from making this decision for them regarding their children, they're doing the right thing for their kids.
I'm Summer.
And I'm Mike.
And we got married with children.
It's been 12 years since we got this gang together.
And we're still running the rapids of living with a blended family.
And sometimes that is just not easy.
If you're looking for support and tools when it comes to divorce, step-parenting, co-parenting, and giving it your best,
you're in the right place.
We're talking about everything.
You ready to get this party started?
Always.
Hello and welcome to another Everything Always podcast. So excited you are here with me today because I have got some really good stuff for you. My guest today is super fun. He's wicked smart, and he's actually known as the fixer in Massachusetts family law. So who am I talking to? I'm talking to Matthew Barach, who is an esteemed family law trial and appellate attorney. He's got his own law firm, which is Barach Law Group, and he's the guy that is super dedicated to excellence when it comes to family law. He's got over 20 years of family law experience, and his prestigious career actually includes 2 huge wins. He won 2 landmark family law cases in the Commonwealth pertaining to the new Alimony Reform Act and child custody, which is removal of a minor child from the Commonwealth. So he's also the author of a legal guide called The Family Law Guide to Appellate Practice. And if that's not enough, he has also been ranked as a top 10 family law attorney in Massachusetts by the American Jurist Institute, also as a top 100 lawyer in America by the American Society of Legal Advocates. And get this, he's also regularly granted the highest distinction on avo.com. That's the site you go to when you're trying to find out if your attorney is going to be any good, and you'll find all the reviews there. So to have good reviews there is awesome. I got to tell you, we had such a fun time. We had a few technical glitches, so you might hear that in the interview unless we did a really amazing editing job, which I'm hoping it sounds that way. But we had a blast talking, and he's so super knowledgeable. And I love when I get to talk to an attorney who just cares, who really cares about all the parties involved. So today, what are we talking about? We are talking about high conflict divorce, because I know that a lot of you are going through high conflict co-parenting, and maybe you're just entering into divorce. Maybe you are going through a custody battle right now, and you're dealing with someone who you have a high conflict with. It's not going smoothly. We're talking about that. We're also talking about parental alienation in the eyes of the court. We talk about parental alienation quite a few times on the show, and we've talked to different experts, and it's really interesting to talk to Matthew because things are seen differently in the eyes of the court, different than how you are seeing things. And while things seem so clear to you, it might not be that way in the eyes of the court. So we're talking about that. Sure, it can be frustrating, but there are some things you need to know. We're also covering fathers' rights, another big deal. I have to say, I really appreciate a lot of the fathers who have written in with questions or have related to certain episodes. And I understand the struggles that you're going through and the challenges that you have. And sometimes things just feel very unfair. So we're covering those things as well. And another thing that is really cool that we're talking about, and I'm so glad that we touched upon this, because this is something that many of our listeners have brought up as well, and that is the stigma placed on parents based on the amount of custody they have with their kids. So if you maybe have less custody than your former partner or the person that you co-parent with, and that person is giving you grief because of the amount of time you have, or saying that they're the better parent because they have more time, we're gonna talk about that stigma and talk about what actually is really important versus the amount of hours or time spent. So yeah, we're talking about all of that stuff, all of that and more on today's Everything Always podcast. Enjoy. Matthew, welcome, welcome. So excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. It's much sunnier there in San Diego than it is in Boston today, so I'm a little jealous of your weather.
It has been pretty nice here in San Diego, and you haven't quite hit your springtime yet, but
no.
It's coming.
When isn't it? When isn't it nice in San Diego?
That's true. That's true. So we got some good stuff to talk about, hard stuff, but good stuff. You have a family law firm, so you have probably seen all the stories, all the icky stories,
all
divorce.
the deep dark secrets. We've seen it all, and we know it all. We know it all. And we deal with it all too. So it's all fun. It's all fun and games with people. You never underestimate. Never underestimate people's the stuff that they do to one another.
Oh my gosh, I can imagine. I always wonder that to myself. If you're in family law, if you're a divorce attorney, the stuff that you see has just got to be movie worthy.
Oh, it is. It is. It's not. It runs the gamut. From War of the Roses to But we see it all, we hear it all. But it's funny. I always tell people that I think there's a little bit of a misconception, in divorce. It's not all like War of the Roses or Kramer versus Kramer or things like that. I mean, a lot of what we're doing as counsel for people is that people are going through their darkest days, their hardest times, their lives. You're dealing with their most intimate treasures, their children, their spouses, and they're trying to move on. And I think there's sort of a stereotype that a divorce lawyer is sort of this evil, cruel person that is come to take my house or something like that, or take the kids away. But that's not really what we do. What we're doing is we're trying to help people move on with their lives in the most economical, peaceful, amicable way possible. And it's really what people do to one another that causes all the friction. And we're just there to kind of do the triage, try to fix it for people.
So, okay, what do you have a personal story that got you into this career, or what was it that got you into this career and made it something that you were like, yeah, that's what I want to do?
The law I always tell people that I tell young lawyers this, the law finds you. You don't find the law. When you go to law school, I don't think anybody ever set out to be a divorce lawyer. And if they did, They probably didn't last. You don't go into it. So, my calling or my career had different machinations, different aspects of the law, real estate or criminal law, different things. And when going to law school, I kind of felt I wanted to be in a different area, mostly like trial work or criminal law work. And then I found myself at one point doing real estate law, which I never thought I would do. And over the course of a career, at a certain point, I found myself doing family law almost by accident. It was one of those things where a friend had said, well, I've got a friend who needs this thing and he's going to court and on this custody thing as a lawyer. I think, why don't you help him? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what a family court is, or it's not what I've done. And then you find yourself going and doing it. And you realize that, well, you know what? All the stuff that I did before really fits for the practice of family law. And so it just kind of fit me. And, I enjoyed the process and talking with people, dealing with people, advocating for people. It's sort of a combination of pop psychology and ferocious advocacy. And somewhere in the
Right.
middle, is where I found the sweet spot with it. And I realized that it was interesting and different. And I saw it as a sort of a calling to help people move forward in their lives and to help them navigate difficult situations in their personal lives, and using the law to do that. But there's no way, if you had said to me, I had done a divorce very early on in my career. I thought it was the worst thing ever. The only good thing is, I said to my friend when I did that first divorce, I said, this must be a great way to meet women, as I got a divorce. But I couldn't stand doing it. And I was like, this sucks. But that, over time and over doing other things, you realize that the skill set and the work was interesting and evolving and different. And I felt we were family law lawyers, as I alluded to before, I think that we really do spend a lot of time trying to help people. And I do think we get a bit of a bad rap, but that's what we're really trying to do that's what the good family law lawyers try to do.
Yeah, exactly. Make that transition as smooth. I mean, like you said, there are some more of the roses type situations, but having, not all family law places are, firms are like that. As you know, not all doctors are the same. Not all, not everybody is the same, but to be able to find and connect with a practice that really has your back and wants the best, like you said, for the kids, and understands that you have these precious children that you love and you want the best for them. So to have that solid team behind that is amazing.
Absolutely. And that's the value of what we do, because we see people come back, and you always are somewhat gratified when you see somebody that was going through a really difficult time, having to move their children to a new school district, having to sell their home, having to get a job when they hadn't been in the workforce for 10 years, 15 years. And you see them 5 years later, and the kids are doing well. The husband and wife who've been divorced are getting along, so that the kids aren't being affected by the acrimony between them that once existed, and they're loving their new job, or or they've found a new husband or a new wife or whatever. And you just see, that they've moved on, and that the happiness is there. And I think that's the gratification for what we do.
Yeah.
Nobody ever walks away. It's not a zero-sum game. Nobody ever wins a divorce.
Right.
That's a misnomer. It's not how it works. I mean, we want people, when I work with folks, I'm certainly going to get them as good of a deal as possible. But at the end of the day, you're splitting up a partnership with relatively equal shares for the most part. And
Right.
you really want to see folks thrive in the future, and ensure you do the best you can for that to happen. And I think there is some gratification or excitement when you see that it kind of worked out. They did move on, and that you played a role in that. And that's really what family law lawyers do for the most part.
Now, there's a couple of things that I understand you guys are experts in or handle more frequently. And I think that, that's something common, that certain family law practices will handle certain type situations more than others. And one really difficult one, especially when it comes to the law and custody, because not everybody understands it. And it's something that's really hard to even get certain judges to understand, is parental alienation. And I can tell you that we've had, unfortunately, too many people that write in and have experienced that within their family situations or divorce situations, where, it's one parent is writing in because they are the one being alienated. Or we've actually even had some that have come out and admitted, I realize that this is what I'm doing. But it's a topic that we've covered a few times, because it's something that our audience wants to hear more about. So can you speak to that, and especially what the law can even do for you in that type of a situation?
It's parental alienation is very, as you've alluded to, it's a difficult topic because it's something that is tricky to prove because judges are skeptical about it. And I'll tell you why. We have an expression in divorce that a 10 doesn't marry a 2 and a 2 doesn't marry a 10. And we're not just talking about looks. What we mean is that a bird of a feather goes together, right? So
Yeah.
what we're saying is that people tend to gravitate to similar people. So we never really know sometimes who the crazy in the room is. Sometimes you think it's your client, turns out it's the other client. Sometimes you thought the whole way through it was neither of them, or I mean both of them, and you find out it's your client at the end. So the point is that it's hard for judges to sift through the way family law courts are set up to really do a deep dive to figure out, okay, there's some alienation here. So unless it's very obvious, so my caveat is if it's obvious, where mom's excluding dad from college meetings, or mom's excluding dad from meetings with the teachers, or mom's not including test results, or mom's not, is saying things to the child over and over again. Unless that's really black and white, it's difficult when it becomes a gray area because no parent is going to say, yes, I've been doing parental alienation so that you won't have a relationship with your son or daughter. So it's not something that's going to be easily proven or easily admitted. So it makes it difficult for a judge to kind of sift through the sand to figure out what's what. So yes, it does happen. Yes, it's painful and it's difficult for children and it's hurtful and harmful. So what do you do? I think the best way to deal with it is to enable the parents to make decisions together by having good third-party resources available to them. Now, I know that doesn't always work, but good parent coordinators, good lawyers encouraging the mother or the father or their client to get along related to the children is what we need. We all need, as practitioners of family law, to encourage our clients to enable good relationships between their spouses and their children. And I think that there are resources available to do that, and they don't always work. But good therapists, good parent coordinators, I think that's how you try to deal with it. And really, lawyers having a duty to encourage their clients not to alienate the other spouse. So it's a group method. And I think not all lawyers do that, and that makes it worse. Not all spouses do that, and that makes it worse. And the courts are not set up to make those kind of judgments very easily when it comes to the alienation of a parent. But it needs to be stopped by good lawyering, good third-party resources, therapists, and parent coordinators. Those are the types of things I think diminish the impact of one parent alienating the other parent. Courts are not going to give us all our answers. That's the problem with family law. The court is not going to, they're going to decide what's best for the child. And that's a decision that you want to try to ensure is never made by a stranger. And that's incumbent on both parents.
Right. Have you dealt with parents on both sides, one who has been alienated and it's clear that that's happening, and then one who is alienating?
Oh, of course, but the alienator is never going to admit it.
Right.
And then, so, when you have the person that's being alienated, you really have to dig up your sleeves and come up with substantial evidence where it's demonstrative of what is going on. And then you have to persuade a judge to make a difference. But the way you kind of do it is you don't just wait for the judge. You try to intercede with the other spouse's counsel. You try to find a resource of a therapist or a parent coordinator that can help your client and also can help the family. You have to take a step back and fix the family dynamic that's going on. And that's advocacy. So sometimes the best way to fix the problem is not, hey, your client is alienating my client away from the children. It needs to stop. But it's crafting the solution, saying, let's, there's a concern here of parental alienation. Let's find a gifted therapist to get to intercede here, and let's fix it. Let's go to mediation or conciliation with a retired judge's experience with parental alienation and come up with a family plan to fix the dynamic. You can't just fix one side. You have to fix both sides to fix what's going on with the child or children that are being affected by the alienation. You have to take that, quote unquote, holistic approach. You have to, think outside the box to fix it. You can't just be, even when you're accusing another party of the alienation, even when you have the proof, it doesn't mean it's going to get fixed. Yeah, maybe we go to court. Maybe the judge will do X, Y, and Z, but maybe the judge won't. Maybe the judge will stop. You're still going to fix the facts on the ground and fix the dynamic that's going on a day-to-day basis. That's what you have to do. And, that's not easy to do, and not everybody does that. But that's the methodology to try to fix it, and that's all you can do to try. Because at the end of the day, it's a difficult thing to allege, it's a difficult thing to prove, and even if you can prove it, sometimes a judge may not be as concerned about it as your client is, or the judge might think that, well, maybe that there's another story, because there's always two stories to tell. It's hard for a single judge system to always figure out in a quick hearing, or 5 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour of testimony, what's really going on. And so your job's to maybe try, sometimes I think as an advocate with your clients, is try to fix what's going on in the first place before you get to that point where you're in court.
Yeah. It's hard to do, I would imagine, especially in the beginning stages of divorce, to talk reason and logic, because you're in such this heated emotional state.
Yeah, well, we have another expression about divorce. It starts with a bang and it ends with a whimper. So you're absolutely, you're absolutely right. It starts like a nuclear holocaust, and then you kind of you move it back to some kind of peaceful, hopefully, resolution at the end. So you do have a duty, though, to make sure that your clients, that you kind of calm that storm down. But it is stormy in the beginning. There's no question.
Yeah.
Hey guys, did you know that you can text us now? Like, if you want to be the first to know if we're going live or just launched a new episode, or maybe that we just went out on a date or had a fight, who's right, who's wrong, maybe we ate too much for dinner or missed a workout. No, seriously, we want to share more of what's going on in our lives, and we want to make sure that you don't miss out on anything new. So send a quick hello to 760-389-3722, and let's stay connected. All right, back to the show.
So what have you seen? Because I think this is another area, is dealing with fathers who are really, really, really struggling to get that time with their kids. And it could be a result of parental alienation, but it's sometimes, I've seen it a lot where fathers are having a really difficult time because of, there's a multitude of reasons, but fathers' rights and movements around this have, become a really big thing because of so many issues around this. Can you speak to that and the things that you have seen and potential solutions for fathers?
Sure. I think times are changing. So I would preface it with, we see more and more, this is the good news, we see more and more younger folks, probably under 40, when they get divorced these days, doing shared parenting plans. More and more younger people under that age group are both working, both doing actively engaged with their children. And so we do see, when folks are a little bit on the younger side of divorce right now, we're those historic norms where mom stayed home and dad was the financial provider. That's changed tremendously in society, and that we're seeing that impact in divorce, where there's less sort of stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad type situations. more and more both parties are working, more and more both parties are sharing the parental duties. So more and more we are seeing fathers end up with shared custody. And there is sort of a movement across the land where it's not in every state, it does vary from state to state, where there's a presumption of a shared custody plan. And I think in the next 10 years, 15 years, I think most states will adopt the model that it's a shared parenting arrangement first and foremost. And that's a presumption in the law that will need to be rebutted. So I think that's where it's going in terms of fathers' rights or that. I think that fathers are playing a much more active role in getting more and more time. I think that studies have changed. There used to be a bias against that when I first was doing this, and that's kind of changed over the years. Now, does that in every situation? No. So, fathers, what do? I mean, I think that they do have to sometimes battle for the time. But see, the problem is this is where I kind of start with the societal norm and how that's changed and evolved over in the last 20, 30 years or more. The thing is that what family law judges are really doing is they're assessing what the parties have done historically and deciding how that impacts the children. So that's really what happens, is that if a father has been a full-time provider to the family and mom has been the primary functioning parent to the children, and then they're getting divorced, what happens is the judge looks at you like, well, what do you want me to do about it? Mom stayed home for the last 10 years and you've been the primary provider for the family. I'm not necessarily going to change that dynamic. See, that's not the role. Their role is really, in some ways, talk to judges about this all the time. I think that their role is like the Hippocratic Oath. It's to do no harm. And I think they try not to. I think that the family comes to you with the dynamic already in place. And that's what makes it challenging at times for fathers to achieve an equal type parenting situation, because you're flipping the dynamic that existed. And the judge is entrusted with figuring out, in all states, what is in the best interest of a child if they have to make a determination.
Right.
And so their determination they have to make is, well, what's the child been living with for the last 12 years, the last 10 years? Okay, mom's been with that child, made every doctor's appointment, every medical appointment, made all the play dates, got the child up, all those, the bed and made the dinners and all those things. The father came home and coached baseball. So, what do you do with that? That doesn't mean the father doesn't get significant access to the child. No one would suggest that. I don't think. But that's what we're fighting for, is to ensure that a significant amount of time. But it's the dynamic in the first place that we're always challenged with. And that's the rub. That's what's difficult. And that's what judges are faced with. So how do you deal with it? Well, you deal with it by I think, again, trying to advocate that the father's role should be increased, because divorce is a shared sacrifice. Mom may have to go back to work if it's in that sort of traditional norm, historic kind of relationship where mom stayed home and dad worked. That can also be the flip side too nowadays. A lot of women do very well and they work, dad stayed home, so that it's the same thing. So then mom needs more time. So you make the argument that it's impactful for the child to continue to have that relationship with the father in that situation where if they've been working. So you want to ensure that there's enough time for that father. And you make the argument that that's what's, it's best for the family dynamic. And that can again be done by bringing in professionals, by advocating, all those type of things. But I always have felt that you gotta look at the disease before you look at how you treat it. And what's really happening is that judges, when faced that decision, are starting with what was the status quo, what was the dynamic in the relationship historically. And that plays a huge impact. And so when two spouses weren't doing it equally, yeah, mom might end up with the majority of the time. But the question is, well, you got to ensure that father has a significant amount of time. And you can't split a child like you split a house.
Exactly.
And a child has a great voice in that too, particularly a child, when they hit the age 12, 13. So this last 18 years, the last 2/3, the last third of the sort of if you go by age 0 to 6, 6 to 12, 12 to 18, that last third, the child's going to play a significant voice in that too. So you're really talking, what do you do, 0 to 12 years? And you can spend all your days fighting about it, or you can try to craft a solution. But we always want to encourage parents to make those decisions, because again, you do not want a stranger deciding the fate of where and when your child is going to spend time.
Yeah, especially when if you both can come to that agreement. I feel like, and this is totally my opinion, and I'd love to get your take on this, but from my perception, there seems to be a lot of stigma around who has the parent that has the more time with the child is clearly the better parent, the one that has most custody. And it frustrates me because I think that there's, parents that say, oh, well, the kids spend most of the time with me, so obviously I'm the better parent, or, they start to put down the other parent because maybe the parent only has weekends, or sometimes every other weekend, or whatever it is. Maybe it's a 30-70, or maybe it's a 60-40, or whatever it is. But there's parents that, kind of walk around telling this story that they're the ones that are there more. And as you were just saying, there's so many different reasons, right? Once you're apart, you don't know what the job is. Some people are working, they've got night shifts all the time, or they're firemen maybe. There's all different odd schedules that people have, and they still need to keep those jobs in order to support their children and whatever support there is that they have to pay for. And I feel like there's a bad rap that gets, and a lot of times it is towards dads, which is why I brought up the father's rights. You're just a Disneyland dad, or you're just this type of dad. And it makes me sad because I feel like a lot of parents get framed as a certain type of parent. And then when the children do get to have that time with them, instead of it being really quality time where they can really connect and bond, the child has a different perception of that parent. Well, you don't have as much time with me, so you must not love me as much. And it's sad to me. It's one of the things that makes me so sad, because like you said, in those really important years between 1 and 12 years old, why should the child be growing up thinking, oh, mom or dad doesn't really want to have that much time with me, instead of saying, this is awesome. I'm so excited to see them. And this is why I have these days, because mom and dad aren't together, and this is the schedule that works. Is that making any sense?
No, it is. No, I think that let me answer this way. Parenting is not a game of perfect, right? So, we don't get scores as parents. I think our job as parents is to do good enough. If I ever I have a parent coordinator that I do a lot of work with, and we joke that if we ever were to write a book, we talked about doing my next book on, that parenting is just about doing enough. There's no better parent. There's no, good parent. There's no bad parent. You just have to do enough for your kids. That's what parenting is. It's you're not going to make every perfect decision. You're not going to choose everything perfectly. Your job is to love your kids and to do enough for them. And so parents play different roles. And there might be the better parent might be the parent that sees the kid once a month. Who knows? You're not getting scored in your parenting. What we need to do is we need to shield children from that process to eliminate those feelings. So in other words, I do a lot of high conflict child custody cases. We always tell people, the damage you're doing, you can't undo. And so you have to be the adult, and you have to accept your former spouse or your former spouse to be as they're doing what they can, and that's them, and I'm me, and I'm going to do what I can, and together we're going to do enough, and we're going to love our child. That's what it's all about. And your job when you go through a divorce is to shield and protect your child from that acrimony between you and your spouse. Because every single solitary study has said now, and many of them are new studies, that children that were exposed to the divorce during the parents' time when they're getting divorced have long-term effects. But children that were not exposed to the divorce process do not have lingering effects when they're older. That's what the long-term studies show.
Wow.
So what you have to do, it's all about, again, it's not really about the lawyers. It's not really about the judges. We're just helping people move on. It's about the parents making a decision, jointly or singularly, to protect their children from the process of divorce. And if they do that and they don't involve them and they make decisions and prevent a stranger from making this decision for them regarding their children, they're doing the right thing for their kids. Because every study indicates that there won't be minimal long-term effects, if any. So that's the key. That's what it's about. And so that's the conversation that a good advocate will have. And that's the conversation that a good judge will have with parties. And so if you can eliminate those cases, you're going to have a better, healthier child in the future who's going to grow up to be a better, healthier adult. And that's on the parents. And so in every high conflict case, when I do a lot of them, I always remind them of that. And I always tell them that, hey, you married him or you married her. I didn't pick your spouse. I didn't pick the person that you chose to procreate with, and that you can't figure out who's going to take the child to baseball practice on 4:00 tomorrow,
Right?
Or where
You
you're
mean
going
they don't get to
that child.
they don't get to put the blame on you for their choice?
We don't know. I stop them right there. It's you made the choice. You have to live with it. That was the choice you made. So
that's the huge thing. Yeah.
Right. So your choice here is get along and protect your child, or don't get along. And the lingering effects, you're going to share some responsibility for that in the future.
Yeah. Yep.
That's how it
so
goes.
Powerful. I mean, here are the big things that, I'm hearing, which is so true, is remember, you're responsible for the choice that you made. And maybe whatever that is, whoever that person is, if it didn't work out, fine. But now you're responsible for these little humans. And the big thing is having a stranger pick what's best for them. That's like when you, if done with maturity, right, can really make it so much better. And then, those results that you were talking about, those long-term results of the different scenarios, that's huge. I mean, it's just like hearing that, it's just like, oh, I would imagine parents, listening or thinking, dang, I could have done things so much differently. If I could go back, I would change how I did that. And if you're just starting on this journey, or you're right at the beginning of a divorce, like, think about those things, because you get to have the most important impact on your kids and how they're going to grow up.
Exactly. And our emotions get the best of us and those situations. And you have to find a way to learn to keep that in check so that you don't damage your child. And that's what you have to keep coming back to. And when you do that, the end result tends to be a cleaner, quicker, more amicable divorce. And the value of that long-term for yourself and your child is substantial, because the consequence of an acrimonious divorce that negatively involves and impacts your child has long-term suffering that you never get over, and that never ends. And the whole point of divorce is to move on. So you move on as best you possibly can and protect your children. And that's what we try to do.
So great. So many great nuggets to take away from talking to you. It's been amazing.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Where can our listeners find more information about you? And I think you have a podcast as well. Am I right?
We do. Yeah. You can find us at, find me and attorneys that work with me at Barach Family Law in Boston, and on the web. We have a podcast called It's a Mistake. which is fun. We go into production again soon. So it's called It's a Mistake. You can find where you find your podcasts and all that stuff. And I'm also the author of the Family Law Guide to Appellate Practice, which is a nationwide book, which is the only guide to appellate practice for appeals for family law lawyers and for family law for folks that I get a lot of calls across the country from people that get the book and that are doing appeals on their own. So it's actually also good for folks that find themselves in that position as well.
So good. I love it. That's awesome. Congratulations on all of that. That's amazing. And I love the podcast name.
Yeah, the podcast is great. Check it out. It's a lot of fun. We have to go back into production. COVID kind of kicked us a little bit. We did have a few sessions in COVID, but we're about to go back. But it's fun. It's kind of an irreverent take on divorce, and we don't just talk about divorce. And people like it, so it's fun.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. I'm going to check it out.
Well,
thank you so much for today. It was awesome. It's so great to hear, insights from somebody who's, you're in it. Like that's your world every day, helping people and get through this. And I love your standpoint on everything. It's incredible. And thank you for doing what you do. We need more like you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for listening. And we like to say, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you love and be bold enough to share it with someone you don't. See you next time.